going. So you might be pleased to hear that instead of my usual Pret coffee, I actually have got a mint tea in a mug that just so happens to match my top. I mean, I didn't plan my outfit based on my mug, but I can't tell you how much this satisfies my OCD, so yeah, cheers. So in today's video, I am going to be finally addressing a question that you guys have asked me so many times, and that is, do you need to have a PhD in order to go and be able to work in research? Or can you just get into research and work with just a bachelor's degree? Now, I'm sorry that it's taken me such a long time to get around to finally answering this question. So today, I'm going to be giving you the most elaborate, the most detailed, and the most informative video that I possibly can. Now, there are quite a lot of important things that I want to talk to you about, but for any of you guys who may have seen the length of this video and kind of internally screamed because you don't want to sit throughout the whole length of it, let me just tell you that the short answer is no. You do not need a PhD to work in research. So, now that that has been answered, the elephant in the room has been addressed, let's just get into the nitty-gritty of the video and I can explain to you the whole process from lab hierarchy, what the differences between the roles are, and also several stories from myself and also my friends and colleagues. Alright, let's get started. So first of all, let's begin with the hierarchy in a research lab. As with many other jobs and careers, there is also a hierarchy of the individuals and the different kind of roles that are available within a research group. At the very top, you have what we call a PI, also known as the principal investigator. This person is the head of the group, they are the main supervisor, and they most definitely have a doctorate degree, so they are either a doctor or a little bit more advanced than that, they are a professor. Now, these are the individuals who essentially run the lab and run the group, and as well as kind of guiding the kind of science that the group carries out, they are also the ones who are responsible for managing the individuals, bringing in funding, and just managing the group, as I said. So they are the head of the group. Now, the next level down, we have postdocs, which are also known as postdoctoral research fellows. As stated in their title, these individuals do have a PhD, so they are postdoctoral, and they work in the lab very often as independent researchers. Now, I will come back to what I mean by independent researchers, but postdocs generally tend to be quite senior members in the lab, especially after the PI. Now, these individuals come in a whole variety of shapes and sizes in terms of their experience, their level of expertise, how long they have been in the field for, how long they've been in a postdoc for, and very often you do see the biggest age range within this category of people. So in my lab, for example, the 3 postdocs that we have are quite young. All 3 of them are in their early 30s. But I have worked in and also seen other lab groups in which the postdocs happen to be maybe in their 40s or 50s. But obviously the status, the salary, and also the expertise levels of these individuals varies greatly. And it very often depends on their level of expertise and how long they have spent in that field. Next in the hierarchy, we have the PhD students. Now, these individuals are students, but the kind of research they carry out is pretty much like a full-time job. It's not like being a master's student or an undergraduate student where you kind of have to attend classes. Essentially, they work full-time in the lab and carry out research that way. Once again, the age range of these individuals could vary depending on when people actually want to go and pursue a PhD, but typically it seems to be on the lower age range. And if I had to give kind of like an estimate, I would say that the age range is typically between 21, when a lot of undergraduate students finish their degree and want to pursue further study, to maybe around 26. In which case a lot of those individuals have either gone and done a master's, they've done some work experience, they've worked in industry for a year, or something along those lines. Next in the hierarchy, we have got our research technicians and research assistants. Now, I don't actually know what the difference is between a technician and an assistant, but in our group, for example, the term is used interchangeably, and somebody who we may call a research assistant pretty much does the same thing as a research technician. So I don't know if it works differently in different universities or if it works differently in different groups, but for us, they're essentially the same thing. Now this is the category that I fall under. My official role is a research technician at King's College London, and I work within the Cancer Antibody Discovery and Immunotherapy group. I personally have a degree, a Bachelors of Science degree, and also a Master's, but I don't have a PhD. Although you will see in a minute that even a Master's isn't necessary, and when I talk to you a little bit about the experiences and stories of some of my friends and colleagues, you will see that they managed to get on to a similar job as I have without even doing a master's degree. And finally, in our hierarchy, we have got our students. So our master's students and undergrad students, who very often come in to do maybe either year placements, or they do maybe like 6-month rotations, or even if they are an undergrad during the summer, they can come and do a couple of weeks. And although the main purpose of this is for the benefit of the student, for them to learn more about the lab and kind of develop their skills, there are occasions where the work that these more junior students do end up being published and end up in actual academic papers. So if you're in that position, don't think that, oh well, you know, I can't contribute to anything because I'm just a student, because you absolutely can. Now, you may have noticed that if we look at the hierarchy and we remove the very top member, i.e. the PI, and also all of the students, including the PhD students, what you have left are the postdoctoral research fellows and also the research assistants and technicians. So what exactly is the difference between a postdoc and a research tech or a research assistant? Because essentially they're both doing research, so why put the effort in and, you know, why bother going and doing a PhD and becoming a postdoc when you can kind of do a similar thing just as an assistant or a technician? And here's the difference. Firstly, as a postdoc, you have a lot more experience and your skill set tends to be a lot more varied just because of the sheer amount of time that you have spent being trained, i.e. in your actual postdoctoral role, but also in the 3 or 4 years prior to that you have studied your PhD. Secondly, as I mentioned before, postdoctoral fellows are independent researchers. And what this essentially means is that they have a lot more freedom over what they actually want to research compared to technicians and assistants. In many cases, the kind of research work that a technician or a research assistant does is conducted by the PI and is kind of narrated from the top down. However, when you're a postdoctoral fellow, then you have more freedom and you get to choose what you want to research and what area you want to look into. Thirdly, because of the sheer amount of expertise and knowledge, postdocs are more frequently involved in optimizations of experiments and efforts to try and develop new methods of carrying out experiments and testing out a lot more newer techniques. Whereas in the case of the research technicians and assistants, these tend to do a lot more routine experiments, and very often the experiments and techniques may be guided by the postdocs themselves, or as I said, come directly from the PI. I have to say that this isn't a generalized statement for everybody, and a lot of research technicians do have a lot more autonomy in the kind of research they do, and they do get to be involved in developing new techniques and carrying out novel experiments. But as I said, just as a generalization, the postdocs do have a lot more freedom over what they actually get to carry out. Fourth and finally, in terms of career trajectory, postdocs have the potential to keep on working and reach the PI level, whereas research technicians and assistants very often progress to going and doing a PhD or just stay where they are and carry on staying as a technician or assistant, but just working on increasing their skills and becoming more specialized and experienced in a particular field. Now, to kind of drive it all home, I want to share with you a few personal stories and also stories from my friends and colleagues. So let's start with how I personally got into where I am today. I did my degree in biomedical sciences, and after taking a year out and studying for my master's, which was in translational cancer medicine, that was at King's College, after that, I applied for this research technician position. Now, what my supervisors were looking for when they took me on for this role were a generalized background knowledge of science and how things work in a lab, information on various techniques, and methods used in the lab in terms of, you know, doing experiments, and also just how much I knew about the field. So how much did I know about immunotherapy, or how much did I know about cancer research in general? And based on the experiences and the information that I had, that was sufficient enough for me to be taken on this role and carrying out what I'm doing now. Now, I've mentioned this in my other videos, but I do a lot of clinical stuff as well, so I get to speak to patients and consent them onto studies. But in terms of pure science and pure academia, if you like, as well as doing all of those clinical and routine experiments, I'm also working very closely with a postdoc on putting together some papers, and I'm helping her where I can to, you know, gather data and do experiments. So that's definitely something that I get to do, and I have autonomy over that, and I really do enjoy it. Now, the second story is of one of my friends who, after doing 2 years of biomedical sciences before going in and finishing her final year, decided to do something called an intramural year, which is essentially a placement year. Now, I'm actually going to have this friend on this channel to talk about her experience, but basically she hadn't even finished her BSc and she got to work in a cancer research lab for an entire year. She contributed a lot to the team, and she's even going to have some of her data published, which is amazing considering she hadn't even done her BSc yet, or she hadn't even finished it fully yet. So that is just one way for her to manage to do all of this work without having to do a master's or a PhD. The next person is a colleague of mine, and she is also a research technician who started pretty much around the same time that I started. Now, as I said, when I finished my undergraduate degree, I went on and did a master's. But when she finished her undergraduate degree, she went to Australia to work in a lab for 12 months. Again, she doesn't have a master's or a PhD, but because of this year of work experience that she has working in a lab and getting to know routine experiments and learning all of these techniques, she is now working as a research technician, carrying out her own experiments, gathering up her own data, and again working very closely with a postdoc to kind of put this all together. And the final story is one of my friend Felix's, who you would have met because he was on this channel a while ago talking about his experience working in cancer research. Now, he was a research technician, or research assistant, I guess I should say, for 2 years, and he actually did the same masters as I did a few years before me. But when he finished his masters, he started working as a research assistant for 2 years, and after those 2 years he started his PhD, which he has just started and that he's just doing now in the same lab. So that is just yet another story of how somebody can go into cancer research with just a BSc, or I guess in Felix's case also a master's, work, and also then be presented with the opportunity to do a PhD in the same lab on the same field. And there are so many other stories similar, but I hope those 4 gave you a little bit of an insight. Now, finally, we have reached the more practical section of the video where I want to share with you some tips and advice if you also want to pursue this route, and if you want to go into studying, if you want to go into working in research even though you don't have a PhD. So, in my opinion, there are 3 things that are the most important. Number 1 is what you know. What I mean by this is that you might not have a master's or a PhD, but you may have done work experience and learned a lot about a particular field and a particular area of research. And having this knowledge will really help you, because it just means when you start in a new field, when you start in a new lab, then you already have this prior information that you can bring forward to the table and help you become a better research technician or assistant in your current role. The second thing to remember is that in a lot of cases, your specific skill set is more important than the qualifications you have. Now, for example, my colleague who I mentioned did a year placement in Australia before starting her job as a research technician, didn't have a master's, but I'm sure that the kind of people who applied to her role did have masters, or at least a proportion of them did. But she was chosen over some of the individuals who had a degree and a master's because the work experience she had and the skill set that she had acquired was more relevant to this current role than somebody who had a master's who perhaps had a different set of skills that we may not necessarily need in our group. And the third and final most important thing to remember is who you know. For me personally, one of the reasons why I chose to come to King's and why I chose to do a master's in general is to be able to network and get to know different research groups and get to know different individuals and learn about some of the top specialists in the field. So I can't tell you how important it is to network and to talk to people and to kind of get to know who some of the experts in your area of interest are. And I know that networking events or going to conferences or going to talks and things like that can be quite daunting, especially if you're a junior member. But if you are in that position and you do feel a little bit more shy and a little bit more introverted, fret not, because I think one of the best ways to try and get to know people and get to know people in your field is by sending out lots of emails showing your interest in a particular group or a particular lab and asking if the head of the group has a few minutes to chat to you on the phone or Skype. Or better yet, if they have maybe a half an hour in which you can go into their lab and, you know, kind of have a look around and have a chat with them. You don't need to do this when you want something. And what I mean by that is you don't have to send somebody an email and saying, I'm looking for a job, can I come and see your lab? Sometimes it might even work better in your favor if you just say, I'm just curious and I'd like to know what you're working on. And although immediately you might not be able to get a job or get a placement, when those opportunities do become available, these people will remember who you are and they will remember that you made the effort to get to know them and learn about what they do. So when positions become available, then you will be at the top of their list. And as a very wise surgeon who I look up to as a mentor once said to me, don't take no for an answer. If you know you want something, then you go for it and you keep trying. Even if you get no's, even if you get doors shut in your face, just keep trying until you get there. So my lovelies, I hope you found this informative because I feel like I've been talking for like a century now, and good job I made this tea because like my throat is sore now. Do give this video a thumbs up and also share with me some of your stories below of how you got work experience or how you got started in your field. It doesn't have to be research. As you know, I'm always curious about what you guys are up to and I just like to know what you're all doing. So we can have a little chat down below. And as always, if you have any questions, anything I missed out or anything you want me to kind of clear up, then again leave a comment and I'll do my best to get back to you. So my lovelies, subscribe if you aren't already, press the little bell icon to keep updated with the things I create. And I wish you the best of luck whatever you're doing. I hope you're all having an awesome day and until next time, take care and I'll see you later.